Great. Thanks so much, Diane. Okay, next up, we have Ms. Judith Dettwiller. Judy was recently promoted to Advisory Services Manager and provides guidance and recommendations to local governments for implementing and strengthening internal controls, ensuring compliance with laws, and implementing good business practices. She has been with the Legislative Auditor's Office since 2012, and before her promotion, conducted research and worked on special projects, which include justice system funding, reporting, statewide agreed upon procedures, and Act 774 in St. Tammany Parish. Please welcome Judy Dettwiller.
Hey everybody, how are you doing? Let me see, I think we have trying to get it over to where you can see my face. I'm not sure if that's good or bad. Right, so we are going to start talking about the justice system funding schedules. This is something new. This may not apply to everybody that's listening, so my feelings won't be super hurt if this doesn't apply to you and you log off. But if you want to listen, I am more than happy to talk to you as well. So the objective, I'm sorry, let me get this going. Okay. Our objective is to provide the governments with some guidance on how to complete these justice system funding schedules. This is something new. Those entities with a 12/31/20 fiscal year end were the first ones that had to do this. So we've really only had one cycle of these reports coming in, and we're trying to go over everybody what's happening and how to, make it to get better and get things going where you don't have as many questions and we don't have to call you with questions as much. So just to give you a little background, this is Act 87 of the 2020 regular legislative session. It's revised statute 24.515.2. That's in case you want to look it up. But basically, what we're talking about is it requires our office, LLA, to work with the Louisiana Supreme Court, and we need to develop a uniform reporting format for local and state entities that assess, collect, or receive revenue from pre or post adjudicated cost, fines, and fees. This is if somebody's filing a civil lawsuit, if you have a defendant in a criminal court, but this also includes traffic tickets and violations and things like that. This is not going to include administrative type costs, like if the parish zoning board find somebody for not cutting their grass. That's not going through the courts unless the person doesn't pay, and then that's a whole different situation. But just to let you know, the LLA, we did not have authority to postpone this act. I know a lot of people feel like it was kind of thrown out there, but we got it out as soon as we could, and per legislation, it had to be active with the 12/31/20 fiscal year end entities. So just so you know, we're going to look at a little bit of the schedules later. We're going to go through some things at the end of the slides. I'll show you where you can find these schedules and everything on our website. Hopefully I can get to everybody's questions as we go through. If you have a question that's general in nature at the end of the presentation, I will try to answer that. If it's more specific, like, you're asking about a certain type of statute or something that's applicable to your entity, then I'll try and answer those after the presentation via email, or I'll give you a call or something like that. Now, the schedules that we have them broken out into 2 6-month columns. The reason we have 2 columns for your totals are because we have entities with different fiscal year ends. A lot of municipalities have a 12/31 fiscal year end, but the sheriffs, the clerk of courts, those have a 6/30 fiscal year end. So we're trying to be able to reconcile between the 2 schedules when somebody's collecting money and sending it to somebody else, to be able to see if those amounts reconcile back to each other. So therefore, we have to break it down between the 2 6-month columns to allow for that reconciliation. I know it seems a little complicated, but it really is going to help get to the point of what we're looking for. And a big thing is these forms are going to be submitted by your auditor as part of your annual report. You as an entity are not going to need to submit these to me. for municipalities that are sending in their monthly amounts to the state for ticket violations. This is not part of that. You're just tracking those amounts that you're sending, but this actual form is not going to be sent to our office by you. It will be sent by your annual, by your auditor with your annual report, be that a compilation, a review, a test, or an audit. So we're going to start out, there's two different schedules. It's a collecting dispersing entity schedule and a receiving entity schedule. So the collecting dispersing entity schedule, this is for the initial collection point. So what that means is if you're the clerk of court and you're taking the civil filings, you're going to be reporting those civil filing fees and things such as that. If you're a municipality that issues the ticket and somebody is paying the ticket directly to you or to your online vendor, then you're the initial collection point, and those amounts are then recorded in this collecting dispersing entity schedule. Any amounts you're going to be getting from another governmental entity that was given to them first is going to be on that receiving entity schedule. So the sheriff does a lot of collections for a lot of people. If the sheriff is collecting, they're going to be the collecting dispersing entity schedule. They're going to show the amounts they send out, and then those amounts are going to be recorded by the governments that get them on the receiving entity schedule. So the first part that we have in the collecting dispersing entity schedule is the beginning balance of amounts collected, cash on hand. And let me start and go back and remind everybody, this is on a cash basis presentation. It's kind of a little off from the way we normally do because we do report on a modified accrual basis, but for consistency across entities, we wanted this on a cash basis. So our beginning amounts of amounts collected is not going to be a whole lot for a whole lot of entities. This is going to be those advanced deposit funds. It's going to be amounts if you had your mayor's court on the 30th of the last day of your fiscal year, but you can't send those checks out until the next month, which is in a new fiscal year, then those amounts that you're holding on to would be your beginning balance. Sorry about that. The next section we have, which is going to be the big one, is our ad collections. Within this ad collection section, there are 12 category types. We're going to go through all of those after with examples, but we want you to maintain all of those 12 collection types. We want you to keep the names that are in there. And the reason we want those names to stay consistent is we're trying to find out what everybody's collecting across entities. So I need to know what the sheriff is collecting compared to what the district court is collecting compared to what the parish is collecting. And I need it all named the same. So we came up with these 12 broad categories that should fit just about everything. We're asking if something does not fit within one of those categories, we have one that's called other. So only if it doesn't fit within one of those 12 categories, you would put something into the other section. And if it's something that you feel, hey, this is something you guys forgot about when you and the Supreme Court were working on this, please send me an email and we'll consider adding it, a new reiteration of this form. The next section we have are less disbursements to government and nonprofits. So these are when you're collecting on behalf of somebody else. So sheriff that's collecting for the district court, municipal court that has to send those amounts to the state, to Crime Stoppers, to things like that. So this is where you record this. Again, later we're going to go through how to do this, but you're going to only have one agency name and one collection type per line. So that may mean that you may have an agency listed 12 different times that you're sending money to if you're sending them money for each and every collection category. The way you're going to do it is you're going to have the name of the agency. So we want to know who the check was written out to. That's the government or nonprofit it's going to. Then we want the name of which one of those 12 collection type categories it fits into. So for clerks of courts, a lot of times they'll have to send to lots of sheriffs, as the ones that are serving the papers for the civil suits. So it would be St. Tammany Parish Sheriff, comma, civil fees. It would be Washington Parish Sheriff, comma, civil fees. East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff, comma, civil fees. And then if they happen to have some sort of restitution that went through them, then that would be St. Tammany Parish Sheriff, comma, restitution. So again, it's going to be only one entity name and one collection type per line. So you may have multiple lines. The next is less retained amounts by collecting agency. We'll get into the first two areas in a little more detail, but this is going to be where you put the amounts that you keep. Just as in the disbursements to government and nonprofits, we only want one collection type per line. So if you're collecting and you're retaining several different amounts, keeping those amounts, and that's where you're going to put each line on what those amounts go to of those 12 collection category types. Next, we have disbursements to individuals, third party, and processing agencies. So for this one, we have a few different categories. I think we have 5 lines on that one, and we want those 5 lines to stay in there. We know for the less disbursements to government nonprofits and amounts retained by collecting entity, you may have multiple lines within there. You may have to add lines, but disbursements to individuals, third-party collections, and processing agencies, we want you to maintain those 5 lines. Just like in the collecting area, we don't want you to delete any of those lines. We don't want you to add any lines. And if you have 0 amount, just put zeros in there. We do not want a further breakdown. This is where you're going to record your civil refunds, your bond fee refunds, restitution payments, things such as that. And we don't want to know the names that all this is going to. All we want to know is your total amount for each 6-month period that was sent out in those amounts. Next, we have the ending balance of partial payments collected but not dispersed or paid out. So this again is where we're going into those amounts that you may have collected at the end of one fiscal period, but you haven't sent it out yet. I'm sorry, partial payments. So those are for those few entities that are actually collecting partial payments, but are not making the payments to other entities or retaining the amounts for themselves until that partial payment has been paid in full. So let's say someone has a $100 traffic violation and the magistrate lets them pay 5 $20 payments. So the municipality is getting a $20 payment each month, and they're holding that $20 payment in a holding account until the entire $100 is collected. And then they disperse those amounts or keep the amounts that they retain for themselves. Next, we have our other information. It's a little box that's kind of at the bottom of it. This is the beginning, ending balance of total amounts assessed but not yet collected. So this is not going to be used by many entities. This is for entities that may assess amounts but are not collecting them themselves. I have a verification code for you. This is going to be verification code number 23. Verification code number 23 is 4354. Again, verification code number 23 is 4354. Okay, so let's go back to where we were. The next thing is something that is going to be applicable to the courts, the mayor's courts, things like that. That's total amounts waived during the fiscal period. So this one is something that a lot of entities may not have been tracking before, but we are going to need you to start tracking. So this is when there's a cash reduction for time served or for community service. So let's say in a municipal court, somebody comes in, they don't have the funds to pay the traffic violation, and the magistrate says, okay, your ticket amount was $200, but if you do 20 hours of community service and you complete that 20 hours of community service, which within a 6-month or 60-day period, then your $200 ticket is waived. That would go in there. Another example is, say you're in a district court and there's a defendant and the defendant has a $500 penalty. But before the defendant can pay the penalty, he is incarcerated for another offense, and the time served is used in place of that $500 penalty, and that would be an amount waived due to time served. So those amounts are what are going to show up on that and total waived during the fiscal period. Now, receiving entity schedule, this one's a little easier. It doesn't have as many areas within it. The big thing to remember in this is that you need to keep those 12 collection category types. And just like in the collecting entity schedule, remember, you're not going to use every collection type. In this one, if you don't use it, you don't need to put it. Unlike in the collecting entity schedule where I need you to show it whether you use it or not. And these forms, again, I just want to reiterate because I think this caused a lot of confusion with a lot of people. These are the exact same forms that are being used for a district court, for a sheriff, for a clerk, for a parish, for a municipality. So there's going to be things in here that may look foreign to you. You may not call it the same things that we do, but for consistency purposes, for reconciliation, for being able to see what money is flowing from one to another, we need you to use those category type names that we have. Now, in the receipts from, just like in the other areas, you're only going to list one agency name and one collection type per line. So you may have multiple lines. You know, if the sheriff is sending you a criminal court cost and fees, and he's also sending you a criminal fine other, then you're going to be listing that sheriff twice with what one of those collection type categories he is sending you money from. The last line is ending balance of total amounts assessed but not received. So this is for those entities like district courts that may assess fines and fees, court costs, things like that, but they are not collecting on themselves. They have the sheriff that collects for them. So this is to keep a running amount of how much these courts are assessing until they get the money. Once they get the money, it's going to come out of that ending balance. So we're going to go over our 12 collection types right now. And I'm going to try and give you a couple definitions that hopefully may help you understand it a little better. It may cause more confusion. So if it does, you know, please just feel free to call me and we'll talk it through and figure it out. So our first collection type is civil fees. Now this is going to be the amounts that are related to civil law. This is going to be if somebody is suing somebody else for back payment, or the mortgage company is suing a homeowner that has been paying their mortgage, or when the parish comes in and files a suit because someone didn't pay their fee to when the parish had to go cut their grass. So the parish may have issued an administrative fine for cutting the grass for a homeowner, and the homeowner isn't paying that administrative fee. So then the parish sues them in a civil court for that amount. All these amounts are in there. But there's also some tickets, per se, that municipal courts give out that are civil. So the municipal courts, you're going to have to verify whether those are civil violations that you're issuing these tickets under. So it might be a non-criminal littering violation or something like that. Or if it's a speeding violation, then that wouldn't be civil. But I need, you know, you to tell me whether that's civil or not. And next, we have our bond fees. Now, these are fees that are assessed when somebody places a bond. It's usually 2%. It may vary by court. That's where that's going to go. Next, we have our asset forfeiture sale. Now, this one can be a little complicated, so kind of stick with me on this one. So an asset forfeiture sale, we're only recording when the assets have been, the entities have gotten legal right to those assets and the sale has taken place. So say a municipal police department takes place in an asset forfeiture and they are seizing the goods, the car, the whatever, but then they turn that over to the DA or the sheriff where it has to go to an adjudication. The person either has to plead guilty, it has to go to court, something has to be determined that that sheriff's office had a right to seize those assets. Once that has been determined that those amounts had a right to be seized, then the sheriff, the DA, has the sale and sends the amounts out to the entities where that should go to. That is what is going to be recorded here. If you're the municipality that has taken place of that seizure, but it has not been adjudicated yet, you at that point do not have a legal right to that asset. So therefore, you're not going to record this on this. This is only going to be recorded once it has been adjudicated and there is a legal right to those assets. Okay. Next, we have our pretrial diversion program fees. That's pretty self-explanatory. I know a few entity types will have their pretrial diversion fees. That all of those are going to go into here. We have our criminal court costs and fees. This is going to be a lot of things. So I'm going to read you a little definition, and court costs and fees are pretty similar. There's minute differences, but for our purposes, we're grouping them together, and you can do the same. And it's a specific charge or cost, a range of specific charge or costs that are used to defray the costs, operating costs of the courts and court-related operations. Now, a fee is the amount charged to court users and defendants in criminal or civil matters in exchange for the services provided. So you see they're a little bit different, but they're close enough that we're putting them together. Next, we have criminal fines contempt. We were asked to separate this out. So that again is pretty self-explanatory. And then any other fine amount that is not contempt is going to be there. So for a lot of these traffic violations that you're going to do, your magistrate may say your traffic violation for speeding between 1 and 15 miles an hour over the speed limit is $200. Clerk, you take care of it. So clerk, you collect that $200 and you know that you're sending some of it to the Louisiana Department of Health and Hospitals for the Traumatic Brain and Spinal Injury Fund. You know you're keeping $25 for your court costs. You know all the different amounts that are in that court costs and fees that you have to pull out. And then you know what is left is going to be your criminal fine. And that would be the criminal fine other, and that would be reported in there. Restitution, again, self-explanatory. If someone defaces a piece of property and the district court says they have to pay the cost to fix the property, you know, that's a restitution amount they have to pay to the court, and then it gets sent to the person that was hurt or injured by their criminal act, and that's where that goes. We have probation, parole, and supervision fees. These are all kind of bulked together. There's a lot of different type of entities that are collecting this, so we just want to keep track of it. Anything that goes in there would go in this category. Now, this next one is one that's also, we've got a lot of questions on. This is our service collection fees. So this is our credit card fees, our third-party service fees. So a lot of times you as the entity have someone who is running your online operations, and they're collecting these fees and they're retaining those fees for themselves. So this third-party service fee is something you as a municipality do not even see. We need you to look at your contracts and see how much that is. We're trying to find out how much that defendant, that person that had that ticket violation, how much they're paying and being charged, not just what you're getting. So that's why we want those amounts in there, and we need to know what these fees are. You know, credit card fees, some entities roll that in, some charge an additional fee. So we want all of that in there. All those service and collection fees are going to be in there. Interest earning on collected balances, those are the balances that you maintain. Again, agency fund is a big one in this. And in that, you're going to put how much you collected in each 6-month period. And then the other, that was the one we spoke of earlier for our other category. If you see that it's something that you really think that should be in a category in and of itself and does not fit into one of these, we ask that you please let us know what it is so that we consider maybe we need to add that for our next time, or if we make any additions or changes to these forms for next time. And remember, not all of these collection categories will be used by everybody. So, you know, a municipal court may only use criminal court cost fees, civil fees, and criminal fines others, where a sheriff may use every single one. So just remember, you know, if you're not using that type, keep it in the form, but put zeros. I'm going to give you some examples of some of the types that may help you understand a little bit better. And, you know, just remember, again, as I said, and I can't reiterate this enough, you know, we want you to use the 12 names that we have. We're trying to get consistency and understand what things are. So when you're sending in the forms and you're putting Act 453, I don't know what Act 453 is. I don't know what legislative session that came from. I don't know if it's a criminal court cost and fee or if it is something else. So I need you to do the research and find out which one of those category types that should go in. And again, give us a call. We will help you with that. So for civil fees, this is going to be everything, including your refundable amounts. So your advance deposit amounts may be refunded. A lot of civil fees may be refunded. So you're still going to show that when you collect it, and then you're going to retain it in the balance. And then when you send it out, you're going to have it. So that's going to include your copy fees, your non-criminal littering fees, your civil case filing fees. All right, and we have another verification code. So this verification code, number 24, is 9441. Again, verification code number 24 is 9441. All right, so let's move on to our bond fees. Okay, there's our bond forfeiture 2% fee. There we go. That one's a pretty easy example. Our asset forfeiture sale. So that's drug forfeiture income. So, you know, if somebody's car is repossessed, the DA sells it. Once it's been adjudicated, that person has been found guilty. Then the DA takes the amount, he keeps his share, he sends the share to all the law enforcement agencies that were involved. That amount, the DA is going to record here, and you're going to record on your receiving schedule as an asset forfeiture sale from the DA's office. Then we have our pretrial diversion program fees. I've seen that come in a few different names: pretrial intervention fees, diversion fees. Each office may call it something different, but when you record it on these schedules, we ask that you use the name we have, pretrial diversion program fees, for consistency purposes. Next is our big one, like we talked about, our criminal court costs and fees. So this is things like the Judicial College Fund, the Trial Court Management Information System. A lot of people will just put CMIS. I know what that is, but all of our reviewers do not know what that is. So therefore, we kind of need you to name it the same way. And then that way we're not going in and redoing your forms. Traumatic spine, head and spinal injury court fund. I can never say that one right. No matter how many times I have said that, I always mess up head and spine. We have our indigent defender fund. We have a fee that you have to collect, usually for a district attorney or the prosecutor, the city prosecutor. Sometimes you collect a fee for the city marshal as the agent of service. That's there. You have expungement fees that are paid. Those fees are, have to be adjudicated by the judge. It may be a set fee, but the judge has to say that it's okay. Therefore, it's going through the court system. We have the Louisiana Commission on Law Enforcement training fee. We have the criminalistic lab fees. We have fees for Crime Stoppers and things and such like that. All that is your criminal court cost and fees. Criminal fines contempt is a contempt fine, as it says. Criminal fines other or any other fine that is not a contempt, and it is exclusive of any court costs and fees. We have restitution, probation, parole, service collection fees, which we addressed earlier, interest, earnings, and other. I'm going to try and talk a little bit faster, so hopefully I can get to some of the questions. So our less disbursements to government nonprofits, these are some examples of how it should look, like the St. Tammany Parish Clerk of Court, criminal court costs and fees. Now, the clerk of court generally doesn't get a lot of fees, but sometimes there are fees that are collected on their behalf that are criminal. And when you send that to them, that's going to be your disbursement. We also have like the Florida Parish Juvenile Justice Center, criminal court costs and fees. Town of Winsboro, restitution. If somebody was found guilty of messing up a public street and has to pay the town to fix it, that's your restitution. And then we have our bond fees to the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office. They get their share of the bond fees. That's what goes there. Now, the amounts retained by the collecting agency. This one can be confusing if you don't know about these collection fees. So if it's something that you've never heard of and you don't know what we're talking about, you know, call and ask about it. But there are certain statutes that allow the people that collect on behalf of other people to keep a percentage of that collection. So when a sheriff is the collecting agency for the district courts, they get to keep a percentage, or sometimes they get to keep a fixed fee depending on what the issue is or the citation was for. The Louisiana Commission on Law Enforcement Officer Training, there's a 2% fee that the collector can keep. So when you're retaining these amounts as the collecting agency, this is not your credit card fees or anything like that. This is the amount that you're collecting for somebody else, and then you're sending them the money. But by statute, you're allowed to keep a part of that collection on either a percentage basis or a fixed amount. Those amounts go there. What the big thing you're going to concentrate on is the amounts just self-disbursed to the collecting agency. This is going to be all the amounts that you keep for yourself. So municipal court, part of the criminal fine other you keep for yourself. You keep criminal court costs and fees, part of that for yourself, and civil fees. So you should still only show those 12 collecting category types and what of those things that you collect fall within there that you keep for yourself. Disbursements to individuals and third-party collection processing agencies. So this, we do not want to know names. We want, you know, if entity XYZ is who runs your online processing ticket payments, and you're showing the amount that they charge to the defendant to pay their ticket online, and even though they're keeping it and you're not seeing it, it's going to be a dollar for dollar here. You're going to show what you collected in the collection agency or what they collected, and then the amount that they retain in this payment to third-party collect and processing agencies. For civil refunds, I do not need the name of everybody that is getting a civil refund. I just need the total dollar amount per 6-month period. The same with everything else, the restitution payments, the bond fees, other, you're all going to do one big bulk category per 6-month period. So this is where we were getting to the end. This is, if you go to our LLA website, and I was going to show you where it is, but I think you've seen a lot of that today with our CLGE. People have been great with showing you what's going on. Okay, and we have another verification code. Our verification code number 25 is 5857. Again, verification code number 25 is 5857. So if you go to our website, which is lla.la.gov, so you're going to look, and right in the middle of it is a bar that has some different colored red and blue little things. You're going to click on the one that says local government and quasi-public communities and organizations. So once you click in that, that's going to give a lot of stuff what everybody was talking about today. It's going to give you the links to our best practice documents. It's going to give you the link to our CLGE and all the slides and presentations from today. If you look on the left-hand bar when you get in there, that's where everything is. About midway through the left-hand bar is a option that's called Justice System Funding Schedules. And if you click on that, it's going to show you, bring you to our FAQ. We have a new FAQ that should be updated shortly that'll be coming out. It's going to give you the instructions that were general when this came out. It's also going to give you copies of the most current schedules. So you'll have both your receiving schedule and your collecting, dispersing entity schedule. So again, all that can be found in the local government and quasi-public organization community section of the LLA website. And in the left-hand side, and around the middle is where you're going to find everything I need. So I think I have a few questions. I'm going to see if I can get to them, and if anything Did we have any questions? Okay, I'm gonna open my chat, y'all. Give me 1 second. I gotta get my mouse. I have someone that asked, what is the intent of the report when these figures are already reported in our general audit? So the intent is to have consistency. So some entities report a lot of detail, some report big broad numbers. Some people just call everything fine and forfeiture fees. We don't know what part of that is a criminal court cost compared to a fine. And it just, you know, we need it broken down a little bit further than what it is in the audit reports. And we also need the consistency in naming so that we're comparing apples to apples across every type of entity type, not just different ones. And then someone said, how do we need to report if our year end is different than 12/31 or 6/30? So you're going to report your first 6-month period is going to be the first day of your fiscal year. So let's say you have an let me see if I can do the math in my head. You're going to give me a second. So say you have a 7/31 fiscal year end. So your first day of your first fiscal period is going to be 8/1, and you're going to go 6 months out, which is going to be till February 28th. Okay. Then your second 6-month period would start on March 1st, and that March 1st would end at 7/31, which is your fiscal year end. So you just kind of need to, you know, do a little math. It's from your first day of your fiscal period, 6 months later, and then from that the 7th month, the first day of the 7th month through your fiscal year end. Let me see. Do we report the reinstatement fees that the state sends? So I think this is related to the driver's license from O&B, and that would be reported on your receiving entity schedule because that is something that is mandated as a criminal court cost and fee. So you were going to report that on your receiving entity schedule. Am I correct, Patrick? I have Patrick Varagama, one of our lawyers here, making sure I'm not saying anything that isn't correct in our legal parameters.
Yes, that would be correct. If it's something they're receiving from the state, it would be on their receiving schedule.
Thank you. Payments to sheriff for service fees would be service collection fees or civil fees. So if they're serving the papers for a civil suit, we're going to want everything, including civil fees and everything, just all there and together in the civil fees. It's when you're going into things that are criminal related that may go to someplace else. But for civil, we're going to keep it all together. On the collecting entity schedule, this total waive include the value of tickets that are not collected because a person goes through a DA diversion program. Those amounts would be, let me get back to you on that for sure, but I think those amounts are going to be picked up as part of the pretrial diversion program. So those are not going to be waived in per se as the other things as community service and time served. So does total waived during the fiscal period include dismissals of charges? It does not include dismissal of charges because if the charges are dismissed, that in a sense is saying that the person was not guilty. Therefore, you did not have a legal right to those funds. When someone pleads guilty, but the amount is waived in lieu of community service or time served, that you had a legal right to those funds, but you waived them for other circumstances. I'm sorry, give me a second as I'm reading and seeing some that I can answer that are general in nature. So someone's asking about witness fees under court costs and fees or others. I would need to see what statute those were under. I think witness fees would generally be criminal court costs and fees. Let me see if Patrick knows off the top of his head. If not, then we'll have to look into that for you.
In a criminal sense, the statute provides for that as being a cost passed on in the criminal one. So it would be a criminal court cost and fee if it's a criminal in a criminal situation.
All right, does that make sense? And then if it's a civil witness and somebody's having to pay for that, then that would be a civil fee. And I don't see any more questions that aren't specific enough. that, you know, I'll try and get to everybody else. There was a couple questions that were very specific to entities. Let me give you your next verification code. Your next verification code is code number 26, and the number is 8625. Again, verification code number 26 is 8625. All right, so I am going to give you all of my contact information. Again, my name is Judy Dettwiller. That is a direct line to me and my email. I also have a Sandra Whitehead. I may forward some of the emails to her. She's helping me run this program. She's just now coming in. But please feel free, if you have individual questions, if you need help with a certain statute that you don't know which one of those 12 categories it should go into, give me a call and we'll try and figure it out together. You know, we both may need to do some research. Again, like, you know, when I see something like that just gives me an act, I'm not sure what year it's from. I have a real hard time trying to figure it out, but, you know, we can work through it together and we can try and figure out what that belongs and which one of those categories it goes into. Thank y'all again so much for joining us today. We look so forward to seeing everybody tomorrow. We have another half a day full of great training, and we hope the training went well and everybody enjoyed it and got everything they could out of it. Again, remember, you're going to have to submit those verification codes on the form that you found with your packet, and that form is not until you're all done, though. Don't do it until the end of tomorrow. Sorry about that. I didn't want to confuse anybody, but I just wanted to remind you to keep all your verification codes. Thank you again so much, and I look forward to talking to any of you with any questions you have.